Welcome. Tonight we drift back in time, not to the grand castles or lavish feasts of kings and queens, but to a far more humble place, a small thatched cottage nestled in the edge of a quiet medieval village, where the smoke rises lazily from the chimney and the wind carries the scent of wood smoke and earth. This is not a tale of knights or battles. There will be no royal intrigue or shining armour here. Tonight we tell the story of a life lived quietly, but with immense strength. You are a medieval farmer, born into a world of cold mornings, blistered hands and quiet perseverance. Your life is simple by today's standards, but every moment is shaped by the seasons, the soil beneath your feet, and the mercy of nature. The year is somewhere in the late 1300s. You don't know the exact date. There's no calendar hanging on your wall. Only the feel of frost in the air and the shortening days tell you that winter is not far away. Outside, your oxen are still asleep, their warm breath rising in clouds against the chill. Your children lie curled beside you on straw-stuffed bedding, covered in layers of coarse wool and old cloth. The fire has nearly gone out, just glowing embers now. You reach for a log to stir it back to life, because the cold in this little house is biting. Even with the fire going, the stone walls are damp, and the roof groans against the wind. You close your eyes for just another moment, listening to the wind outside, the rooster beginning to crow, the faint rustle of mice in the thatch above your head. Your body is tired, not just from yesterday's labour, but from years of rising before the sun and working until it fades. Farming isn't just your job, it's your entire survival. There is no retirement, no safety net. Each day you must work for every loaf of bread, every bowl of broth, every handful of seed. But tonight you don't need to work. Not really. All you need to do is listen. Let your mind wander as we walk through a full day in your medieval world. We'll rise with the sun, feed the animals, break the frost off the water bucket. We'll tend to the fields, haul firewood and prepare the evening meal. Simple as it may be, we'll survive the bitter cold, face illness without medicine, and find quiet peace in the routines that shaped your life. You'll feel the ache of your back as you work the plough, the sting of icy wind against your cheeks, and the deep satisfaction of lying down at night, exhausted, yes, but with a full belly and your family safe beside you. This story is not one of glamour, but one of endurance, of ingenuity, and of deep connection with the land. And though the world has changed beyond recognition, there is something timeless in your rhythm, something ancient, something grounding. So now, take a deep breath. Let the worries of the modern world slip away. There are no deadlines here, no glowing screens, only candlelight and quiet. Let the hum of history wrap around you, the slow creak of the wooden floorboards, the warm scent of baking rye bread, the distant clang of the village blacksmith. You are safe here, and soon sleep will come. As we begin your day on a medieval farm. Chapter 1. Waking up in a medieval cottage. The first light of dawn does not come from a digital clock, nor from the warm buzz of electric bulbs. Instead, it creeps softly through the gaps in the wooden shutters. Thin streaks of pale grey light rushing across the packed earth floor. The room is still, quiet, except for the low crackle of dying embers in the hearth. Somewhere beneath a heavy woolen blanket you stir. The straw mattress beneath you rustles faintly. It is lumpy, prickly, not at all soft by modern standards. But here, in this time, it is your bed, a pile of straw, layered with worn linen sacks and bundled furs, smelling faintly of the earth, smoke, and time itself. Your bones ache, gently but persistently. This is no luxury bed. There is no padding or insulation, just a flat wooden platform, a little elevated off the floor, shared with your spouse, perhaps a child, or even an aging parent. In the corner of the cottage, a child stirs and lets out a sleepy murmur. You hear the familiar breathing of your family, a slow chorus of dreams and tired lungs, wrapped in the rhythm of survival. Overhead, the roof creaks, not from footsteps, no one walks above, but from the tightening cold, the shifting of beams and thatch bound together with stubborn labour. You remember patching that corner last summer, just before harvest season, with reeds gathered from the riverbank. Not perfect, but it keeps the worst of the rain out. You sit up slowly, the rough woolen blanket sliding off your shoulders. The cold morning air bites at your arms. Even inside you can see your breath. A thin wisp, swirling briefly before fading into the stillness. You reach over the edge of the bed, searching for your boots. They're stiff from the frost, leather hardened by the night. You slip them on anyway, your fingers already reddening with the chill. There is no bathroom, no sink with warm running water, just a wooden chamber pot in the far corner, and a jug of cold water resting near the door. You splash some across your face, a quick gasp at the shock of it, but it wakes you up, just as it has every day, for as long as you can remember. You move to the fireplace, crouching low. The hearth is the center of your home, its literal and spiritual heart. At night, it keeps you alive. By day, it cooks your meals, dries your clothes, and boils what little water you dare drink. The fire is nearly out, just red-orange coals nestled under grey ash. You take the iron poker and stir them gently, coaxing the last bits of warmth. Then, reaching for the dry kindling set nearby the night before, you carefully feed the flames. A faint crackle, then a spark, and soon the fire flickers back to life, small at first, but with enough coaxing, it grows. The room begins to glow in amber light, casting soft shadows against the stone walls. You hold your hands out to it, soaking in every inch of warmth before the day begins. Behind you the others begin to wake. No alarm, just the cold, the smell of smoke, and the call of duty. The animals must be fed, water must be drawn, and today, like most days, you'll work until the light fades once more. You move toward the door, lifting the heavy wooden latch. It sticks a little, swollen from last night's frost. With a soft grunt, you shove it open. A gust of icy wind rushes inside, carrying with it the scent of pine, damp soil, and far-off smoke from other cottages. The village is quiet, still half asleep, but you can hear the distant cluck of chickens, the gentle lowing of cattle, and the rhythmic thunk of someone splitting firewood, already at work. You step outside, your breath curls into the air again, frost clings to the grass, and the dirt path before you is hard as stone. Your fingers begin to sting as you adjust your tunic, pulling it tighter. In the yard, your oxen are waiting. Their large dark eyes blink slowly in the morning haze. Steam rises from their nostrils as they shift impatiently. They need hay and water and a working yoke if you're to plough the eastern field today. Behind them the coop rattles. The chickens are eager to be let out, and the pigs too grunt in expectation. You sigh softly, not from frustration, but from knowing that today, like all others, is full, heavy with tasks, but manageable if you keep moving. And so you do. You step back into the cottage. Your wife is already at the table, placing a small pot over the hearth. It's gruel, as always, made from barley, dried onions, and just a bit of old salt pork. Not much, but it's warm. And this morning, warmth is worth more than gold. You kiss the top of your child's head, who clings to your leg before trudging outside with the water jug. They've done it 100 times already, even at 8 years old. They're part of the work, part of the rhythm. There are no school bells here, just frost and fire and the pull of necessity. And so, the day begins. As the warm aroma of porridge begins to fill the small cottage, you take a seat on the edge of the wooden stool, carefully because it wobbles slightly. It was handmade years ago, perhaps even by your father or your father's father. The wood has darkened from time and soot. You notice the way the grain twists like quiet rings of memory. Everything in this room has a story, though none were ever written down. The pot bubbles quietly over the hearth, the crackle of the fire, the tick-tick of boiling oats, and the quiet sighs of waking life are the only sounds. There's no rush, not because time isn't precious, but because hurrying leads to mistakes, and mistakes here can cost food, or worse. You eat slowly, the warmth of the meal spreading through your body. The porridge is plain, barley meal, yesterday's water, and a pinch of herbs. No sugar, no spices, but to you it tastes like survival. Each bite a quiet triumph over the cold night. Your wife hums a low tune, a lullaby perhaps, once meant for your child, but now simply part of her morning rhythm. Her hands are already busy, cleaning the bowl, preparing a cloth sack with dry bread and a sliver of hard cheese for later. She doesn't ask where you'll go. She already knows. The same fields, the same walk, the same aching back at sunset. You rise, slowly stretching your arms. Your tunic is rough spun, smelling faintly of wood smoke and damp wool. Over it you pull your cloak, thick and heavy, patched many times but still serviceable. You check your belt, knife, pouch, a small wooden charm, carved by your son last winter. You carry it not for luck but for love. Perhaps they are the same thing here. You unlatch the door again and step out. This time the sun is higher, just a pale disk behind misty skies, but enough to cast long, soft shadows across the frosted ground. You walk to the well. The rope creaks as you lower the bucket, the wood damp and swollen from years of use. The water comes up cold, clean, and dark. You carry it back, trying not to spill. The animals greet you with impatience. The pig grunts and stamps its hooves. The chickens cluck like they've been awake for hours, and perhaps they have. The rooster struts near the gate, proud and unbothered. You feed them quickly, kitchen scraps, grain, hay. The cow gets last night's cooled mash. She moos with approval. Each creature here depends on you, and you, in turn, depend on them. The oxen are the most important. Great, slow beasts, all muscle and rhythm. You brush frost off their backs, check the yoke, and run your fingers along the harness ropes. A weak rope could mean a broken plough. A broken plough could mean no planting. And no planting in spring means no food in winter. It's all connected, as it always is. You lead them toward the field. Your boots crunch against the frozen path. No paved roads here, just dirt hardened by time and travel. The fields stretch before you, brown and sleeping beneath a thin veil of white. In a few weeks it will be time to dig furrows again. Now the earth is resting. But not you. Along the path you pass other cottages. Smoke curls from chimneys, children chase chickens. An old man gathers kindling with hands stiff from arthritis. You nod to your neighbour, he nods back. No words, just mutual understanding. You both woke up today, that's enough. Before reaching the field, you pass the small church. Its bell is silent, but its presence is felt. You pause as you always do to make the sign of the cross, not out of obligation, but out of rhythm, another kind of survival. Near the edge of the property you spot something small and bright, a crocus maybe, the first flower of the season. It pushes up bravely through the frost, fragile but defiant. You smile softly. Even in the hardest seasons, life finds a way through the cracks. You finally arrive at the barn. It's little more than a lean-to, wooden beams and straw for a roof. You pull out your tools, a wooden rake, your ploughshare, and a worn hoe. Each one bears the marks of 100 days of labour, handles polished by calloused hands, metal dulled by stubborn earth. You set them against the fence and sit briefly on a stone. Your breath fogs the air again. You close your eyes, not to sleep, but to breathe. This is what a day begins like on a medieval farm. It's not dramatic. There are no roaring dragons or clashing swords. Just cold fingers, a warm bowl, and the quiet, ever-turning cycle of survival. And that, in itself, is a kind of epic. One you live, one breath, one chore, one day at a time. Chapter 2. Morning Work on the Farm. The field is silent, not in the way of stillness, but in the way of expectation. A silence that waits to be broken, not by thunder nor by war, but by work. Quiet work, familiar work. Work passed down from generations of farmers who walked this same patch of land, turning soil that has fed their children and their children's children through hunger, through storms, through years that were too dry or too wet or too short. You grip the handles of the wooden plough. Its frame groans slightly as you test its weight. The leather straps connecting it to the oxen are still damp with morning frost, and your hands sting against the chill. The earth resists. It always does at first. The top layer is hard, crusted over from the cold, but beneath it lies the dark, rich soil that you rely on. It's patient. It hides its strength until you dig deep enough to earn it. You give a gentle command. The oxen lean into the yoke with quiet obedience. The blade cuts into the earth. Slowly, the soil rolls away, each furrow a line of promise. You walk behind it, boots sinking into mud softened by recent rain. Step by step, row by row, there is no rush, no need for speed. The day is long, and the work never ends. There is comfort in that. You know what comes next, and after that, and the day after, and the one. The birds have returned. You hadn't noticed at first, but now their song blends gently into the background. A woodpecker taps somewhere near the trees that border the land. A lark calls, circling low. The earth is waking with you. When the furrow is done, you pause. You glance over your shoulder at the straightness of your work. It isn't perfect. You don't expect it to be. The soil curves where a tree once stood generations ago. A rock juts near the edge, unmovable since time immemorial. You know to work around it. You know this land's quirks like you know your own hands. You kneel to inspect the soil more closely. It's darker this year, holding more moisture, good for root vegetables. You rub a pinch between your fingers. It clings, that's a good sign. Your ancestors didn't have science. They had touch, smell, gut feeling. That was enough then. It's enough now. You rise again and stretch your back. The muscles protest. Your knees creak. You squint up at the sky, grey but not threatening. It may not rain today. That would be a blessing. The last thing you need is a sudden downpour, softening the tilled earth back into a slurry. You call the oxen again. They plod forward, pulling the plough into another row. Their breath puffs invisible clouds. You murmur to them, not words exactly, but syllables of encouragement. You speak to them as you might speak to a friend, a slow, trusted rhythm, because here animals are not pets, they are partners in survival. Around mid-morning you take a break, not because you want to, but because your body insists. You find your way to a low stone wall that marks the edge of your field. It's covered in moss now, the way old things become part of the earth again. You sit carefully, pulling out the cloth bundle your wife packed before dawn. Inside, coarse bread, dry but filling, a piece of hard cheese, sharp and tangy. You eat slowly, not because there's so much to enjoy, but because there's not much to spare. You chew deliberately, eyes scanning the fields, watching for signs of animal tracks, of shifting clouds, of other men walking with the same slow weariness in their gait. A dog barks in the distance, probably from the manor house. You've seen the Lord's hunting dogs before, sleek, well-fed, fierce, not like your neighbour's hound. That one has 3 legs and a crooked ear, but it barks all the same. Loyalty is not measured in pedigree here. You sip water from a wooden flask. It tastes faintly of oak, maybe a bit of ash from the hearth, but it's cool, clean. You refill it every morning from the well, a deep one dug by hands now long gone. As you rest, you think of the winter, just behind you now. You think of the way the wind howled through the boards, and how the chimney smoked instead of drawing cleanly. You remember the nights when the wind seemed to sneak under the blanket, no matter how tightly you held your wife, and how one of the chickens nearly froze in the coop. You remember the day the well iced over, and you had to break it with a hammer borrowed from the blacksmith. You also remember the first thaw, the way the icicles dripped like music, and the way your wife smiled when she saw the first green sprig poking through the garden bed. You remember the feeling of hope, small, quiet, like a flickering candle, but there. You finish your meal and brush crumbs from your lap. The break is over. You rise again. The oxen look back at you, heads tilted as if to ask, "Ready?" You nod once. It's time to return to the furrow, time to work, time to survive. You step back into the field. The oxen begin their slow march down another row, their hooves making soft, wet impressions in the newly turned soil. The morning's rhythm returns without resistance, like a melody your body knows by heart. It is not the melody of ease, but of purpose. Every movement, the pressure on the plough's handle, the lean of your shoulders, the measured steps through muddy ground, is practiced, ancestral. The sun, though still hidden behind a veil of cloud, has climbed higher. Its light has softened the edge of the cold. You can feel it, faint but welcome, brushing against the side of your face, warming the tops of your hands, glinting briefly off the dewy furrows before you. You glance toward the distant tree line again. A crow caws once, then flies overhead, wings beating a slow, deliberate tempo. These birds are always watching, always waiting, for spilled grain, for exposed worms, for death. They are survivors too. The furrow you're working is longer than the last. It edges toward a patch of marshy ground. You know this stretch well. It's always been difficult. Too wet after a rain, too soft in the thaw. A place where even your surest footing can vanish into muck. Still, it must be ploughed. You don't have enough land to spare a single row. As you pass into the low ground, the plough drags harder. The wheels sink slightly. The soil changes beneath your feet, becoming sticky, stubborn. The oxen grunt. You murmur to them, gently but firmly. You press your weight forward, leaning into the... It's not large. More vine than root, perhaps, but tangled thick. You tug it free, toss it aside, then rise once more. The work continues. Time passes. The rows begin to add up. The field now bears the mark of your morning, dark furrows laid side by side, like pages of a slowly written story. No page is perfect. Some curve slightly, some carry stones or uneven turns, but together they speak clearly. Of labour, of care, of survival earned, not given. As you near the edge of the field, you catch sight of your neighbour, Alric. He's younger than you by some years, but already wears the same stooped posture. He waves, a small gesture. You nod in return. You've never exchanged many words. Few farmers do, not in the morning. But there is a deep understanding between you. His land meets yours at the far corner, marked only by a shared stone placed by your grandfathers. There's no fence, no need for one. Neither of you could spare the wood. Alric's boy walks beside him, maybe 6 winters old, too young for ploughing, but old enough to carry a bucket or fetch water. You remember when your own hands were that small. You wonder if your father once looked at you the same way, quietly proud, quietly afraid. You turn back to your work. One more row, just one more before the sun reaches its peak, and you return to the cottage. That is the deal you make with yourself. It always helps to make small bargains. One more furrow, one more pile of firewood, one more trip to the well. Break the day into pieces, digest it slowly. The body survives better that way. The oxen, though tired, obey without protest. They know the routine, the feel of rains, the weight of soil. They've pulled this plough across this field so many times that they know where the marsh begins and ends. When the leather creaks, when the soil gives way, they adjust without command. You trust them more than some men. The last row is crooked. It always is. The mind, worn by the hours, drifts too easily, The hands tire, the oxen slow. But it is done. You reach the edge of the field and gently stop the team. You walk ahead to loosen the yoke, rubbing the animals' flanks as you go. They breathe heavily, steam rising from their broad backs. You do not speak thanks aloud, but you feel it. As the oxen graze lazily at the grass along the path, you return to the field alone and scan the work. 10 furrows deep, earth overturned, seeds yet to be planted. But that is later. For now the land lies open, ready. Your boots are soaked, your hands are numb, a scratch on your knee. From here you can see your cottage. The roof is new this year, replaced after the spring storms peeled away the thatch. The chimney leans slightly. Smoke curls gently from it. Someone is preparing the midday meal. And though your back aches and your shoulders feel like old rope, you smile. Because this field, this plough, this morning of cold and work and mud and silence, this is what survival looks like. Not grand battles, not royal feasts. Just one more row, one more step, one more day. You call the oxen. They follow without question. It's time to return. Chapter 3. Midday Chores and Unexpected Challenges. The cottage door creaks as you push it open. The scent greets you first. Warm broth simmering on the hearth, herbs crushed beneath a wooden spoon, the faint sweetness of turnip greens cooking down in iron pots. Your stomach tightens in response. Hunger isn't a visitor here. It's a daily companion. You live close to the edge of it, always. Inside, the room is dim but warmer than the fields. The firelight dances across the walls, flickering on clay mugs, wooden bowls, bundles of dried lavender and thyme hanging from the beams. A small pot crackles gently over the coals, bubbling like a sleepy song. Your wife stands nearby, stirring slowly. Her sleeves are rolled, her hair tied back beneath a plain cloth cap. She does not turn immediately, only glances up and offers a brief, tired smile. You return it with a nod. No words yet. There will be time for talk after food. You peel off your outer cloak and hang it on the wooden peg near the door. Mud flecks fall from the hem. You wipe your boots, though you know the floor has already seen worse. A straw mat catches most of the dirt, but the cold stone beneath your feet is still slick from last night's chill. Your eldest child is sitting on the floor near the hearth, shelling peas into a shallow bowl. Their hands move quickly, practiced. They look up and beam when they see you, though their cheeks are smudged with ash. You ruffle their hair gently, then crouch beside them. The little ones sleep still, curled on the cot in the corner, bundled tightly against the afternoon draught. Their breaths rise and fall in quiet syncopation, like leaves drifting on a breeze. One stirs, half wakes, then returns to dreaming. You ease yourself onto the stool by the fire. The heat from the flames sinks into your legs, your fingers, your back. Every joint sighs in relief. You stretch them slowly, methodically. There is no need to rush. The day still stretches ahead, and the sun has not yet peaked. Your wife hands you a bowl. Simple broth, cabbage and roots mostly. As you eat, the sound of village life drifts in through the shuttered window. A dog barking. A cart rolling slowly over frozen earth. The metallic clink of a blacksmith's hammer rising and falling with a patient rhythm. Somewhere in the distance, a bell rings once. A signal, not of time in hours, but of a meeting. Or a death, you're not sure which. You listen briefly, then let it fade. After your meal, you rinse the bowl using a small basin by the hearth. The water is cool and grey, reused from the morning wash. It will be used again before the end of the day. Nothing is wasted here. You rise. The warmth is tempting, but the work is not done. Never is. Outside again, the wind has picked up slightly. You walk to the small garden patch behind the house. The soil here is shallow but fertile. Cabbage, onions, leeks, things that can grow quickly and survive the frost. You bend and check the rows. A few weeds have crept in overnight. You begin pulling them slowly, gathering the thin roots in your palm and tossing them into a sack. Your child joins you, holding a wooden bucket. You smile at them, and they beam back, eager to help. You show them how to check the roots, how to spot the hidden ones that grow beneath the cabbages. It's small work, but important. Everything here is a link in a chain. If one link breaks, the rest follows. A sound interrupts the rhythm. It's soft at first, a shuffle, a rustle in the brush at the edge of your property. You pause, look up. A crow flutters away, but that wasn't it. Then you hear it again. A voice, not shouting, not alarmed, just strained. You rise slowly, placing the hoe against the fence. Your child steps closer, uncertain. You motion for them to wait. Rounding the cottage corner, you see the source. It's Thomas, the cooper's son. Barely more than a boy, really. He's holding his side, limping slightly. His face is pale, dirt smeared along one cheek. "Your oxen," he starts, breathing heavily. "They broke the fence, down by the stream. Father said I should come fetch you." You blink once, the words settling like stones in your stomach. The stream. That's near the southern boundary, where the earth gets soft and the posts rot faster than you can mend them. You'd reinforced it last month, but the frost has a way of shifting everything loose. You nod once, no panic, but inside your chest tightens if the oxen are out. You thank Thomas, give him a piece of dried apple from your pouch, and send him back toward the village. Then you turn, call for your wife. She steps out quickly, eyes scanning yours. She nods. Before you speak, you only need to say, "the fence." She understands. Your cloak is back on, your knife tucked at your side, a length of rope slung over your shoulder. You take your staff, the tall walking stick carved from ash, and begin the trek toward the stream. The sun has passed its peak now, slipping slowly down behind the line of bare trees. And as you walk, you think, midday was meant for rest, for tending gardens, for warming chilled feet and shelling beans by the hearth. But not today. Today, midday brings a different challenge. The walk to the southern edge of your land takes longer than usual. Your legs, already worn from the morning's ploughing, feel heavier now. Each step is deliberate, careful. The narrow path winds past thickets of hawthorn and tangled blackberry brambles, mostly bare now, but still catching your cloak when you pass too close. The sun is muted behind layers of cloud, casting a pale silver light across the open fields. In the distance, a pair of crows circle low over a distant patch of ground, squawking back and forth as they search for scraps. You grip your staff tighter, more for balance than protection. The ground here has always been treacherous after the thaw. The frost lifts the stones, and the earth beneath becomes unpredictable, hard one moment, then slick with mud the next. You know this path well. You've walked it in every season, but today the urgency makes each step feel longer. Finally, you reach the stream. It's shallow now, just a trickle weaving through stones and reeds. In spring it will swell and rush, but for now it babbles quietly, unaware of the trouble nearby. And there it is, the fence. Or what's left of it. 2 of the posts have collapsed inward, likely pushed by the oxen's weight. The wooden rails are splintered and lying half submerged in the mud. Your yoke team, Balin and Hob, the large brown oxen you've raised since calves, are nowhere in sight. Your breath catches for a moment. If they've wandered too far, if they've reached another village's plot, or worse, the Lord's hunting grounds, you shake the thought away. You crouch and inspect the damage. The soil around the fence is waterlogged, deep footprints punched into the mud, and tufts of coarse hair caught in the rails confirm the direction they left in. They didn't panic. No signs of a struggle. Just curiosity, perhaps. A scent carried on the wind. A patch of tastier grass beyond the fence. That's all it takes. You rise, scanning the horizon. There, a bend in the distant meadow. A shadow moves. And then another. They're grazing. Still together. Still close. You feel your breath steady. You start walking. As you approach, you whistle low and steady, a call they know well. The oxen raise their heavy heads. Balin snorts and turns toward you. Hob stays rooted, chewing lazily on winter grass. You call again, this time with a firmer tone. Balin begins to walk. Hob follows a moment later. You let them come to you. No chase, no panic, just patience. Once they're close enough, you gently loop the rope around Balin's thick neck, then guide the second loop around Hob. You scratch behind their ears. Their eyes blink slowly, unbothered. Perhaps they didn't even know they were in trouble. The walk back is slower, more cautious. The sun has begun its descent, painting the distant clouds in soft pinks and steel grey. You pass the broken fence again, but you do not stop. That will come later. For now, getting them home matters most. By the time you return to the cottage, your wife is already outside. A bundle of fresh rails and posts resting against the outer wall. She says nothing, only glances at the oxen, then at you. You nod. She understands. You secure the animals again in their enclosure, double-checking the latches, tying off the ropes with extra care. You take your time brushing the mud from their legs, whispering soft words to them as you work. They grunt in response, but do not resist. When it's done, you return to the fence with hammer and stake. The repair is slow. The ground is soft and resists the new posts. You drive them deep, using rocks as makeshift supports. The rails groan as you lay them in place, your breath puffing clouds in the late afternoon air. Your hands are raw, blisters reopened, but the fence stands again. As you rise, rubbing your back, you hear the faint echo of your child's voice calling from the cottage. Supper, perhaps, or simply checking that you are still near. You wave a hand in return. Then, with your tools slung over your shoulder and the light fading behind you, you make your way home. It's quiet again. Not the silence of fear, nor the silence of exhaustion, but the kind that follows a task completed. The kind of quiet that feels like survival. Chapter 4. Evening. Life in the cottage. The light has changed. It's no longer the soft silver of morning or the waning gold of afternoon. Now it is blue-grey and fading quickly, dissolving behind the trees and slipping between the cracks in your wooden shutters. Evening has arrived, not with urgency, but with slow certainty. You step inside the cottage, and the warmth wraps around you like a blanket. The hearth glows steadily, its flames smaller now, but still strong enough to cast amber light across the stone floor and rough-hewn walls. Shadows sway gently along the beams, dancing with the last movements of the fire. The familiar scent of wood smoke, herbs, and hot broth clings to the air. A pot has been hung low over the coals, and you hear the quiet bubbling of stew. Tonight, a mix of root vegetables, a bone for flavour, and a few precious lentils saved from the last market trip. It's not a feast, but here, warmth and simplicity are their own kind of abundance. Your wife ladles out the portions without a word. The children are already seated near the hearth, waiting patiently with bowls in hand. The littlest one still wears a smudge of soot across her cheek. She grins when you sit down beside her, eyes wide and shining in the firelight. You eat in silence, as is the custom, not because there is nothing to say, but because the food, however humble, deserves your full attention. Each bite warms your chest, eases the tightness in your shoulders, dulls the low ache that's lived in your lower back for years. You tear a piece of rye bread in half and hand the larger portion to your eldest. They nod in thanks and tuck it beside their bowl, saving it for the last spoonful of stew. You taught them that. The bread is meant to catch the flavour at the bottom, where it's strongest. After supper, the bowls are cleaned with warm water and dried with a bit of linen that's been patched and mended too many times to count. The water is poured into the chicken's trough outside. Waste not, ever. Then the evening chores begin. Your wife settles by the fire to mend a tear in the tunic you wore this morning. A needle moves quickly, confidently, in the dim light. She doesn't look at her hands. She doesn't need to. Her fingers know the path, just as surely as yours know the weight of the plough. You take your whetstone and sit by the doorway, sharpening the blade of your small knife. The steady scrape of stone on metal is almost musical, joining the soft rustling of the fire and the muffled breathing of sleepy children. The rhythm is slow, almost meditative. The blade does not need to be sharp enough to fight, just sharp enough to cut rope, trim branches, clean roots. That is enough. Outside, the wind picks up slightly. You can hear it slipping through the trees beyond the fence, whispering low over the thatched roof. A draught finds its way in beneath the door, curling around your ankles. You tuck your feet under the bench and draw your cloak tighter. You check the latch on the shutters, then the door. Sky beyond has turned dark. No stars tonight, just heavy clouds, thick and low. Snow may come, or maybe just more cold wind. Either way, you brace for it. You always do. The children are dozing now, the little one curled against your wife's side, the eldest with their head resting on a pile of bundled cloth, eyes half closed but still listening. You tell them a story, not from a book, there are none in the house, but from memory. It's an old tale, one your grandfather used to tell by the fire in this very same cottage. Story of a farmer who tricked a greedy nobleman by planting half his crop upside down, a quiet rebellion hidden in plain sight. The children giggle when you mimic the noble's pompous voice. Your wife chuckles too, though she's heard it 100 times. When the story ends, no one claps, no one cheers. That's not the way here. The smiles are small. The warmth lingers quietly in the room, like the last ember on a cold night. You lift the smallest child and carry her gently to the cot. She stirs, murmurs something sleepily, then drifts back into dreams before you even pull the blanket up to her chin. The others follow soon after. One by one, they crawl into their shared bedding. Piles of wool, stitched cloth, and straw-stuffed mattresses laid across low wooden frames. They lie close to stay warm. You press your hand gently against each forehead, a quiet ritual you never skip. You and your wife sit by the fire a while longer, neither of you speaking. There is no need. The silence is companionable. It's been earned. Eventually she stands and begins banking the fire, adding a final log and pushing the coals into a tight pile that will smolder through the night. The flames settle low, the cottage dims. You blow out the tallow candle on the table. The smoke curls upward like a thin spirit, vanishing into the darkness. You crawl into your bed, more a platform than anything, covered with heavy wool and animal skins. The cold bites at you as the blankets are lifted, but within moments your own heat returns. Beside you, your wife sighs deeply, her hand brushing yours beneath the covers. You stare at the ceiling beams, watching the last flickers of firelight play across the wooden planks. You think of the
plow waiting for tomorrow, of the soil resting in the dark, ready to be turned again. There is always more to do, but not tonight. Tonight there is nothing but breath, and quiet, and warmth. The fire, though carefully banked, begins to dim. Its glow still touches the low beams and the packed earth floor, but the heat no longer radiates far. The warmth that once filled the room has now retreated to the hearth, as if guarding itself for the long night ahead. You feel the difference. Everyone does. Winter nights in the countryside are not simply cold. They are long. They are slow. They carry with them a kind of stillness that makes even breath feel louder than it should. Outside, the wind moves through the trees with a voice all its own. Sometimes it howls like a wounded animal. Other times, it hisses softly, like secrets passing between branches. You listen to it from your bed, trying to decipher what it brings. A storm? More snow? Or simply the deep quiet that winter always demands? The walls of the cottage groan gently as the cold presses against them. The roof creaks, the timbers flex. Though sturdy, your home is not impenetrable. A draft slips through the corners of the doorway, brushing your face like cold fingertips. You pull the blanket higher. Beside you, your wife sleeps, her breath shallow and slow. Across the room, you hear one of the children cough once, twice, then settle again into sleep. You wait, listening. The cough doesn't return, but it reminds you of how fragile rest is in a home like this. One bad night, one draft, one unshaken fever, and the morning may come with sorrow. In winter, nothing is guaranteed. You close your eyes, hoping to rest, but your thoughts drift. The fire has sunk lower now. There's still a faint ember glow, but the shadows have grown. You think of the oxen, huddled in the lean-to beside the cottage. You think of the plow, now too cold to touch. You think of the rows of cabbage buried beneath frost and snow, holding tight to life until the thaw returns. Winter asks you to trust in your preparations, to believe that the small woodpile will last another week, to believe that the potatoes in the cellar won't rot before February, to believe that your body, your aging, aching, knotted body, will hold out long enough for one more spring. A gust of wind shakes the shutters. A handful of snow thumps gently against the outer wall. You imagine the world. Outside your door, blanketed now in white, fields hidden, paths erased, every footprint buried beneath silence. Sometimes, in the darkest part of winter, the snow falls so thick you can't even find your own fence line. The road disappears. The horizon fades. You could take 5 steps and not know which way is home. That kind of cold isn't just a discomfort. It's a presence, a weight, a test. And yet, inside this little room you endure. You always do, because there is no other option. You shift slightly in bed, careful not to disturb your wife. Your bones crack quietly. The cot beneath you creaks. The skins and will scratch against your arms. But the warmth is returning, slowly, gently. Your body adjusts. Your thoughts slow. The fire may be fading, but the night cannot last forever. It never does. And so, another hour passes in the long dark. You do not know when sleep finds you. It steals in, quiet as snowfall, covering your thoughts like a blanket. Outside, the wind continues. The branches tap against the wall. The cold wraps itself around the cottage like a second roof. But inside you are still. Not safe. Not truly. But still. The harshness of winter is real, but so is the quiet strength it calls forth. The stillness. The endurance. The warmth shared between bodies. The way even the weakest flame can defy the dark if only for a few more hours. In the end, that is enough. Chapter 5. A sudden sickness in the family. The morning does not greet you as it usually does. There is no warm smell of bread crust from the hearth. No quiet chatter between your wife and the children. No sounds of the animals stirring beyond the walls. Only the soft creak of the rafters above your head and the hollow, almost too still silence beneath the thatched roof. Your eyes open slowly. The fire has burned down to ash. Pale gray light filters through the shutter cracks, and frost etches thin veins along the corners of the window pane. The room holds the heavy breath of a cold dawn. Then, the cough. It cuts through the quiet like a twig snapping in the woods. A deep, rasping, dry sound, not from outside, but from the other side of the room. Your wife stirs beside you. She's already half awake. You feel it in the tension of her breath. You sit up slowly, the blanket falling from your shoulders. The air bites your skin, but you ignore it. The cough comes again. It's your youngest. You cross the room quietly, stepping over packed straw and worn floorboards. The child lies curled in the corner cot, their small hands gripping the edge of the blanket. Their face is flushed, red in the cheeks, but their lips are pale. Their eyes open briefly when you kneel, but they do not speak. Your wife joins you, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders, kneeling beside the child. She places a hand gently on their forehead. Her expression does not change, but you can see the answer in her eyes. Fever. And hi. She murmurs softly, brushing back the child's hair, checking their pulse the way her mother once taught her. You place your hand on the child's chest, feeling the quick rise and fall beneath the blanket. Breathing rapid, shallow. It must have come on in the night. You try to remember. Was there a chill? Had they coughed yesterday? But no. They were laughing just last night, sitting by the hearth, eating stew. Children fall sick quickly in winter. Sometimes it passes. Sometimes it doesn't. Your wife reaches for a rag and dips it in a basin of cold water near the hearth. She wrings it out and lays it gently across the child's forehead. The child flinches slightly, then settles again. You watch. You listen. The kettle is set on the hearth. More herbs are gathered from the small bundles hanging from the ceiling beams. Thyme, sage, meadowsweet, a pinch of dried elderflower. You do not have much, your stores are low this late in winter, but she knows how to make the best of it. You fetch the small earthen pot from the back of the shelf. Inside is the last of the honey, thick and dark, saved for moments like this. She mixes it carefully into a cup of hot water steeped with herbs. It will soothe the throat, ease the ache. You lift the child gently, cradling them against your chest as your wife brings the mug. They drink in small sips, barely conscious, lips trembling. You whisper to them softly, telling them stories they've heard before. The fox in the forest, the girl who followed stars through the snow. You don't know if they hear you, but you keep speaking, just in case. The other children have woken now. They stand near the hearth, silent, watching. Your eldest brings another blanket, without being asked, and helps stoke the fire. Their face is pale but calm. You meet their eyes. They nod once. They understand. There is no need to explain. The hours pass slowly. You do not go to the field. The plow waits in the frost. The oxen, too, stay idle. Your world has narrowed to this small circle. Your child, your wife, the fire, the rising steam from the herbal cup. The House feels both smaller and larger. Every creak of the wood, every shift in the wind, feels loud, important. By midday, the fever rises further. The child shivers, then sweats, their body hot to the touch. You strip the bedding, replace it with drier blankets. Rub their back in slow circles, speaking softly. The herbs help, but not enough. Your wife steps outside briefly to fetch snow in a bucket, pressing it into cloth to cool the child's hands and feet. She moves quickly with practiced urgency, but her eyes betray her fear. You see it there just beneath the surface like a crack in glass. You think of going to the village healer, but she lives nearly a mile away, and her youngest died just before the last frost. Some say she no longer treats the ill. Some say it broke her. And if this is only a passing fever, you wait, you hope, because sometimes that's all there is. In the late afternoon, the child falls into a deeper sleep. The fever still lingers, but the coughing slows. The color in their cheeks shifts slightly, less red, more flushed pink. You dare not celebrate, but you feel a sliver of breath return to your chest. The cottage quiets again. You take a moment outside while your wife tends to the others. The air is dry and sharp. The trees creak in the distance. A lone bird passes overhead, black against the slate sky. You breathe deeply. You feel the cold enter your lungs like glass. It reminds you, you are still here, still standing. Back inside, your eldest is reading aloud to the others from a strip of old vellum, a copied story passed down by a traveling monk seasons ago. The words are slow and hesitant, but clear. They all listen. Even the sick child stirs faintly at the sound, eyelids fluttering. You sit by the hearth and take your wife's hand. It is cold and shaking. You don't speak. You only hold it. Outside, the light fades. Another winter night is on its way. But for now, the fire burns again. The breath continues. The circle holds. And that is enough. Night falls without ceremony. There is no sunset worth watching. Only the slow drowning of daylight behind thick clouds, until the world turns iron, gray and then black. The fire is stoked once more. A thicker blanket is draped over the sleeping child, though the fever still lingers under their skin like a shadow. Your wife dozes briefly, slumped in a chair beside the cot, her head against the wooden wall. Her shawl has slipped from her shoulders, and you lift it back gently, careful not to wake her. You let her rest. She has done all she can for. Now, you kneel beside the child, your hand resting on their back. Their breaths come slower now, deeper though still uneven. But the coughing has not returned. The flush in their cheeks has dulled, fading from angry red to a soft, mottled pink. Their skin is warm, but not burning. You listen to every breath. In the silence, you think of all the other winters you've lived through. You've seen sickness come and go. You've seen neighbors dig graves in frozen ground with hands wrapped in rags. You've seen healers light candles for children who never woke. And you've seen life return when no one expected it. You know enough to hope and enough to fear. The fire pops, spitting a single ember across the stone. It dies on contact. You rise and sit quietly by the hearth, a blanket across your lap, the crackle of flame filling the space where voices might be. The other children sleep. Your wife breathes evenly now, her body finally loosening in the curve of the chair. You keep watch. The hours pass slowly. Each one folds into the next, long and silent. Time becomes soft at the edges. It loses shape. You sip broth from a wooden mug and chew a strip of dried apple, but your body barely feels hunger. Only tiredness, like a fog hanging behind your eyes. You fight it off. You don't know when you begin to hum, softly, a lullaby your mother once sang when you were young and sick in this same cottage. The melody is low, barely sound. But the child stirs when they hear it. They shift slightly. Their lips part. Their brow eases. You lean in. Their eyes flutter open. Just for a moment. They look at you unfocused and drowsy, but present. There's recognition in their gaze. And then, in a voice so small you almost miss it, they whisper, "Papa." You close your eyes, just for a second, and let out a long breath you didn't know you were holding. They drift back into sleep, but the air feels different now. Warmer, lighter. You touch their forehead. The fever has broken. Not gone, but no longer burning like it did before. You let your wife sleep a while longer, and simply sit there in the soft orange light, your hand resting gently on the cot. The wind presses against the walls outside. The trees whisper to one another. But in here there is calm. It will be a long road back to full strength. Days of rest, careful meals, warm drinks, but the worst has passed. And somehow that feels like a kind of miracle. By dawn, the frost on the window has begun to melt in slow tears. Drops fall onto the sill in tiny plinks, catching the morning light. Your wife wakes with a start, blinking at the brightness. You nod before she can ask. She rises quickly, checking the child, touching their cheeks and hands, brushing back their hair with gentle reverence. You see her shoulders drop, her lips tremble slightly. She does not cry, but her eyes shine. You eat a quiet meal, just porridge and boiled nettle tea. The children rise slowly, rubbing their eyes, speaking only in whispers, as though afraid to disturb the fragile peace in the room. The sick child sleeps still, curled beneath blankets, a slight sheen of sweat across their brow. But their breathing is steady, calm. You step outside. The air bites, but not as sharply as yesterday. There's a softness to the ground beneath your boots, moisture beginning to rise through the thaw. A crow caws lazily from the branch above your cottage, then takes flight, black wings cutting across the pale morning. You check the oxen. They blink at you with sleepy eyes, stomping hooves into the hay. You feed them slowly, one hand against each flank. There is comfort in these routines. In the distance, smoke rises from the village chimneys. The world, as always, continues. You return to the cottage, and the fire welcomes you like a friend. Your wife has taken your place beside the child. She hums now the same melody you'd used in the night. You sit nearby, soaking in the warmth, the quiet, the fragile stillness of survival. And for the first time in 2 days, you close your eyes and sleep. Chapter 6. Signs of spring and return to the fields. The change comes slowly, not all at once, like the striking of a bell, but in subtle murmurs, soft hints whispered into the cold. You begin to notice them, though you've been fooled before. It starts with the air. Not warmer exactly, but different. The sharp edge of winter wind dulls just enough to make you pause and breathe it. In without bracing, there's a scent buried in the breeze, earth, not frost. Damp soil, not dry bark. A hint of green, waiting beneath the brown. The frost on the windows thins earlier in the morning. One day it's gone before the children rise. Another day the roof no longer sighs beneath snow weight. Meltwater drips in slow, steady beats from the thatch, falling into the bucket you placed beneath the eaves just in case. You can hear it, tick, tick, tick. By now, the child who fell ill is recovering. Thin and pale still, but sitting up, smiling, asking questions again. Your wife brings them out for a few minutes each day, wrapped in layers, to feel the wind on their face and hear the birds. Returning to the trees, the birds sing again. Only a few at first, cautious calls, testing the air, but soon more join. It's been a long winter, longer than some, but the world is beginning to stir. You step into the field one morning before dawn. Alone. The cottage still sleeps behind you, and the fire inside burns. Lo, the air has weight but not bitterness. Your boots press into the ground and it gives soft, wet, pliable. Not yet. Dry enough to plow, but close. You kneel and press your hand to the soil. It smells alive. You smile. The plow will soon be pulled from its resting place under the lean-to. The harnesses will be checked. Ropes replaced. Iron rubbed clean of rust with wool and oil. But not today. Today is for watching, for listening, for believing. A crow caws from the fence post, head tilted, watching you. Behind it, across the narrow field, a patch of ground reveals a surprise. Tiny green shoots, nettles, early risers. You walk toward them and crouch, brushing aside dead leaves. The shoots are bright, sharp, persistent, the kind of green that refuses to be ignored. You pick a few carefully, wrapping them in cloth. Nettles sting if handled wrong, but your hands are used to such things. You've always welcomed their return. An early meal of soup, a tonic for the blood after a season of salt meat. And root cellars. Spring announces itself through hunger before anything else. Later, in the cottage, your wife stirs the small pot over the fire. The nettles simmer with a handful of barley and chopped onions, softened from the last of the store. The children huddle around the table, curious. You tell them what the plant is, how your father showed you, how his mother showed him. Your eldest tastes it first, wary, then pleased. Warm food that isn't dried or pickled or boiled from the same 4 roots. It's a start. After breakfast, you and your eldest walk the length of the field together. The snow has retreated into the hedgerows and ditches. Patches of green moss cling to the base of stones. The fence you mended in winter still stands strong, though a few rails have shifted. Together, you hammer them back into place with stones and elbow grease. You teach them how to check the soil with their boot, press, twist, lift. If it sticks too thick, wait another day. If it breaks apart, clean and dry, you're ready. Today is close, but not yet. You explain it without raising your voice, just enough to pass it down. Spring is not just a season, it is a series of decisions. Inside the barn, the oxen stir more frequently. You brush their coats and feed them warm mash in the morning, whispering to them as you work. Hob and Balin grunt and stamp their hooves, ready to move, to pull, to work. You feel it too. Work is not a burden, it is a return. Winter takes. Spring gives purpose again. At the edge of the woods, you collect fallen branches to dry for kindling. You notice rabbit tracks in the mud. You hear the drip of thawing snow from the pines. You spot a hawk gliding overhead and nod to yourself. The signs are all there. You return to the cottage with arms full of wood. Your wife meets you at the door. She smiles just slightly, but it's enough. We'll need to air out the bedding, she says. You nod. Tomorrow. Let the wind take the winter out of it. You both understand what that means. In the evening, after the chores, you sit on the low stool near the fire. The youngest sits on your lap, warm and light, a blanket draped over your shoulders. They ask about the first day of plowing. They ask when the lambs will be born. They ask why the trees take so long to wake up. You answer each one gently. Plowing begins when the soil lets you. The lambs will come when they're ready. The trees wait because they remember the snow. They listen. They believe. Your wife braids the hair of your eldest by firelight. The children draw crude shapes in the ash with burnt sticks. The room smells of earth, smoke, and new greens. It is not spring yet. Not completely. But it's coming. And for now, that is enough. The next morning, the world feels ready. There is no fanfare, no trumpet to declare the beginning of spring's labor. Only a stillness that feels softer, lighter. The light filtering through the cottage shutters carries a golden hue, not the dull gray of winter. The scent of thawed earth rides in through the gaps beneath the door. You rise early, before the fire has fully awakened, and dress quietly. Linen shirt, wool tunic, heavy boots. The same clothing you wore when the frost set in. But today they feel different, lighter, as though your body remembers what it means to move. Your wife is already kneeling by the hearth. She glances up, reading your face without a word. She hands you a small loaf, dense, warm from the coals, and a wedge of goat's cheese, wrapped in cloth. You nod in thanks, tuck the meal into your bag, and kiss her forehead as you pass. Outside, the oxen wait. Hob and Balin, the steady pair you've raised since calves, stamp their feet and huff impatiently as you fit their yoke and adjust the harness. The leather creaks. The wooden plow sits nearby, propped against the fence, its blade cleaned of rust and shined with lard days ago in anticipation. You lead the team to the first field, the one closest to the cottage. The soil here is softer, better drained, always the first to open after a hard winter. It's tradition to begin here, where the sun touches earliest and longest. The first step is always the hardest. You drive the blade into the earth with your foot and coax the oxen forward. The wood groans. The team leans into the harness. The ground resists, but then, like breath long held, it yields. Dark soil rolls open in neat furrows behind you. Damp, rich, heavy. The scent is overwhelming, mud and roots and the faint memory of summer. You smile. The rhythm returns almost immediately. Push, step, click the tongue. Guide the line. You fall into it like a song you've always known. The plow carves its path, and the earth opens willingly, each row a promise waiting to be fulfilled. By mid-morning, your eldest joins you with a second yoke and their own small team, less experienced but eager. You guide them at first, walking beside the plow, correcting their stance, adjusting the depth of the blade. They make mistakes. The furrow bends left, then too shallow, then too deep. You say little. Correction comes not in scolding, but in repetition. Try again. Feel the land. Listen. By the third pass, their lines grow straighter. The oxen respond more naturally. Their hands find the right pressure on the wooden beam. You nod and step back, letting them lead. Another generation finds their rhythm. The sun climbs higher. You pause to eat beneath the hedgerow, wiping sweat from your brow and breaking the bread into pieces. The goat cheese is salty and sharp. The water in your flask is cool from the well. You eat in silence, facing the field, watching the light dance on the damp rows. You think of how many times this field has been turned. Your father's hands, and his before him, each season a thread in the long tapestry of time. The soil carries their stories, their sweat, their failures and triumphs. You press your palm into it now and feel the weight of all that came before you. This land is not just yours. It holds memory. It holds promise. After the meal, you work again. Slower now, more methodical. Your muscles begin to tire. The first full day is always the hardest. Your legs ache. Your shoulders burn. But your spirit is light. Every furrow is a message to the coming season. We are ready. We have endured. We begin again. By late afternoon, the field is half-plowed. The sun casts long shadows across the rows, and the birds return to the hedges, chirping their approval. The breeze carries the scent of turned earth all the way back to the cottage. Your wife waits there, hanging laundry to dry. She sees the rows. She smiles. You stable the oxen, rubbing them down, offering them mash and a bucket of water. Hob leans into your shoulder, affectionately as you brush his neck. You pat his side with gratitude. They, too, have remembered what it means to work. The evening brings warmth back to the hearth. You and your eldest lean over a basin, washing soil from your arms and faces. The children ask how the field looks. Your wife ladles stew into wooden bowls. It's thick today, early greens and dried beans and bits of dried meat that have been softened in broth. The meal tastes better than anything you remember from the winter. Maybe it's the work. Maybe it's the air. Maybe it's the knowing that the world is beginning again. You sit by the fire, exhausted, but not burdened. The child who had fallen sick sits beside you now, sketching crooked lines in the ashes with a burnt stick. Their color is stronger today. Their smile comes more easily. You place an arm around them, pulling them closer. The others speak softly, and the fire crackles, and the scent of soil still clings to your sleeves. The door remains open, just a little, letting in the sounds of spring. Owl calls in the trees, wind through the grass, the fading hum of a day well used. Tomorrow you'll return to the field. There is still much to do. But for now, you sit in the golden glow of firelight and know the cold has loosened its grip. The land has welcomed you back. You are no longer surviving. You are living again. Chapter 7, Market Day and Trading Realities. It begins before sunrise, not with fanfare, but with a quiet excitement, an energy that hums beneath the morning frost. The day is still dark. When you wake, the sky outside your window tinged a soft, silvery blue. Your breath hangs in the air as you dress by. The glow of the hearth's last embers. Today is market day. Not every week. Not even every month. But today, the village hosts its first true gathering of the season. Merchants will come. Peddlers. Neighbors from far-off hamlets. Maybe even a noble steward or a wandering bard. It's not just a place to trade goods. It's a place to remember that the world stretches farther than your field and cottage walls. You pack carefully. A sack of dried beans. Cleaned, sorted, tied shut with a cord. A small bundle of wool your wife has spun over winter. Evenings. 2 smoked eels, wrapped in nettle leaves. And 1 hand-carved spoon, the last from the branch you saved in autumn. It is simple but smooth, well-balanced. You made it with care. Everything is placed in a basket lined with cloth. Nothing extravagant, but enough to barter. Your eldest joins you quietly, pulling on boots, carrying their own small bundle. A woven pouch of eggs wrapped in straw. 1 cracked last time from the jostling. They've learned how to pack better now. Outside, the frost bites, but not cruelly. The sky is clear. Promising sign. You step onto the path that winds between cottages and woods. The others in your family waving from the doorway. They'll remain home today. Someone must watch the little ones. Stoke the fire. Boil the barley. Prepare for the goods you may return with. The village square is just over 2 miles by foot. Not far, but still a journey in the early hours. Others join along the way. Familiar faces. Neighbors. Old Osric with his cart full of turnips. Matilda the milkmaid, walking briskly with a bucket of curds tied to her waist. You nod to each other, not out of formality, but shared understanding. This is a rare day. You walk with your eldest beside you, and the trees rustle overhead as the sun creeps up behind the hills. Birdsong returns. Sparrows dart between branches. A squirrel leaps across the path, startled by footfall. The earth is muddy, but no longer frozen. In the distance, you hear bells. Not church bells. These are smaller, tied to the bridle of a pony or the end of a cart. Rail. The sound quickens your pace. You arrive as the village awakens. The market square is still forming. Stalls built from old timber and canvas unfold like skeletons stretching after sleep. Merchants lift crates from wagons, unwrap cloth bundles, and place their wares with pride. Iron tools, ropes, clay, pots, dyed threads, baskets of salt fish from the coast, wax candles, jars of goose fat. There is no money in your pouch. But that doesn't matter. Trade is the true currency here. A sack of beans for a wedge of hard cheese. A dozen eggs for a tin whistle. A wool bundle for a half-pound of honeycomb. You find your spot near the corner of the square, where the sunlight will fall later in the morning. You place your goods in careful arrangement, plain but honest. Your eldest lays the eggs out gently, nestled in straw, and smooths the cloth beside them. Already the market begins to fill. Children chase one another through the stalls. A man with a traveling lute begins to pluck a tune. The scent of fresh bread mingles with smoke and herbs. Voices rise. A mix of laughter, negotiation, storytelling, and the rustling of cloth being lifted and weighed. Your first trade comes before the sun clears the trees. An old woman, stooped with sharp eyes and a reed basket, inspects your spoon. She doesn't speak at first. She runs her thumb across the bowl, nods at the grain, then looks up. "Solid work," she says simply. "Oak." You nod. She opens her basket, pulls out a small sealed jar. "Jam. Blackberry by the look of it." She offers it without a word. You accept the trade. She walks off, spoon in hand. Your eldest beams. The first trade always feels the best. You place the jar carefully in the sack. Already, you feel the weight of the journey lighten. As the morning unfolds, your basket slowly empties, and your sack slowly fills. For the eels, you gain a small sack of salt and a strip of red-dyed cloth. For the wool, a chunk of beeswax and a handful of dried pears. The beans fetch a tin of rendered lard, smooth, creamy, fragrant. Each trade is a conversation. sometimes brief, sometimes winding with stories and jokes woven in. You learn of a man whose roof collapsed in the last thaw, a woman whose goat gave birth to triplets, a boy who saw a white stag near the edge of the woods. The market is not just trade, it is news, connection, community. You listen more than you speak. You find that to be enough. By midday, the square is full. The sounds have grown louder. More carts, more voices, more animals. A traveling monk offers blessings for a copper coin. Children gather near a juggler, his colored balls flashing through the air. The smell of roasting nuts, fire-cooked barley cakes, and dried sausage fills the breeze. Your basket is nearly empty now. Your eldest eyes a carved whistle on a leather string at the next stall over. Peddler, young, friendly, but keen, guards it. The child looks to you. You nod. They take the last of your eggs, approach shyly, and offer them with both hands. A pause, a smile, a nod from the peddler. The whistle changes hands. Your child loops it around their neck, not playing it, just holding it. It means something. You feel it too. Not because it's valuable, because it was earned. You take a slow walk through the rest of the market together. No goods left to trade, but that's all right. You're full enough. You pause by the barrel maker's booth, watching the cooper smooth the inside of a fresh cask. The iron hoop makes a satisfying ring when he sets it. Your child watches closely, curious. You tuck the thought away. A future trade, a future skill. On the far side of the square, a man from the next village over offers a story for a coin, or, if you've none, a good joke in return. You trade a story about the time your goat escaped into the chapel. It earns a laugh, and in return he shares a tale about a fox that tricked 3 farmers and lived to tell it. The market is winding down now. The sun hangs lower. The stalls begin to fold. You carry your sack over your shoulder, heavier now than when it was full of beans. What you've gained isn't wealth but comfort, warmth, and the memory of shared space. You begin the walk home. The trail is muddier now, but the trees still whisper, and the sky is soft with early dusk. Your child skips ahead, they whistle bouncing gently on their chest, while you trail behind, slow and content. The world feels bigger today, and yet more familiar too. The path home feels lighter. Even with the sack over your shoulder and the chill settling in again, you walk with a kind of warmth in your chest. Not from the sun, but from the quiet satisfaction that comes only after a good trade. The forest shadows stretch long across the trail, and birdsong begins to soften, replaced by the rustle of wind and distant animal calls. Your child walks ahead, turning back now and again, sometimes whistling their new wooden tune, though not often, just enough to remind you they're proud. They've grown, somehow, in a single day. The sack swings gently with your steps. Wax, jam, salt, lard, cloth, and a few dried pears. Nothing grand, but everything useful, everything meaningful. Each item with a story now stitched into its stitching, salted into its cure, folded into its fiber. The cottage roof comes into view just as the sun kisses the tree line. Home. The door creaks open, and the rush of warmth spills out. Your wife stands at the hearth, stirring a pot with a long wooden spoon, one you carved last year, now darkened with use. The smell greets you first. Barley, onion, a sprig of rosemary. The little ones crowd the doorway, eyes wide, not just at your return but at the sack. They ask nothing at first. They wait. You place the sack gently on the table and begin to unwrap its contents one by one, quietly, without rush. The jar of jam earns the first gasp. Your wife lifts it to the light. Blackberry, she says softly, as if remembering it from a dream. It's rare, a treasure, something to stretch over many weeks, one spoonful at a time. Then the cloth, red, earthy, rich in tone. Your wife rubs it between her fingers. For the baby's new wrap, she murmurs and folds it carefully. The salt is greeted with reverence. A full season's worth. Enough to preserve fish, flavor stew, and soften hard bread. The wax, too, is a prize, soon to become candles, seals, and polish. Even the dried pears bring a moment of surprise. Each child receives one held like gold in small hands. Your wife meets your gaze, her eyes shining with quiet pride, not from wealth, but from enough. Later, you sit near the fire and share a meal. The stew has grown richer with a spoonful of lard and a few herbs saved for the occasion. Your child wears their whistle like a pendant, chewing bread with jam spread on its center like paint on parchment. The youngest taps their pear against the table before eating, as if making it last just a moment longer. The flicker of the hearth dances across your faces. Shadows on the timber walls move gently with each flame sigh. You tell stories from the market, not grand tales but moments. The woman who bartered for the spoon, the juggler with one missing boot, the merchant who claimed he'd seen a dragon's skull, which turned out to be a cow's, painted black. Your children laugh softly. Even your wife smiles without effort. After the meal, she lights the old candle with a bit of the new wax, melting them together. The scent is faint, honey, and tallow but familiar. The fire dims, and the room settles. You sit together, not speaking much, just watching the fire fade. That night, you lie in bed listening to the sounds of your home. The slow breathing of children, the whisper of wind. Beneath the shutters, the creak of timber adjusting to the cold. And for a long while, you stare at the ceiling, thinking not about hardship or hunger or labor, but about exchange. Not just of goods, but of time, of story, of knowledge, of laughter. Market day reminds you that your life, though small in land and coin, is wide in connection. That the shape of a spoon, the curve of a smile, the lift of a tune, all carry value. That people meet not only to trade but to recognize one another. You close your eyes, not to escape, but to carry that feeling into sleep. Morning returns softly. The day after market is always slower, satisfying. The children wake and ask again about the trades. Your eldest helps your wife pour the jam into a clay jar to stretch it over time. The salt is sealed in a linen pouch and stored high on a shelf. The red cloth is tucked into the sewing basket, ready to become something new. You sharpen your knife, check the harness, make a list in your head of what the field needs today. But before you return to work, you take a small square of jam-spread bread, walk to the stump just outside your door, and sit for a quiet moment. The earth beneath you is still damp from last night's dew. A bird flits down nearby, pecking at the soil. The world is wide and working again, and somewhere someone else now holds your spoon. Chapter 8. A Festival of Fire and Song. The invitation comes not in words, but in rhythm. It begins with the sound of distant drums. Faint at first, just a low, pulsing thump, like a heartbeat coming through the forest. You hear it while tending the field. In the soft light of evening, a steady cadence carried on the wind. Others pause too, heads raised, ears tilted like animals sensing the change in air. You smile. The festival is near. You've waded through the darkest months, turned the soil, faced frost and fever. But this is something different. This is not about trade or toil. It is not about duty or necessity. It is about celebration. A gathering older than coin, older than crown. You walk home with a little more spring in your step, the sound of those drums echoing just beyond your thoughts. That night, you sit by the fire and tell your children stories. Not the cautionary tales of wolves or sickness or saints, but the bright ones. Stories passed down from long ago. Tales of fire spirits dancing between trees. Of stars that fall and speak in riddles. Of singers whose voices made crops grow and lovers who found each other by candlelight. The little ones lean in, eyes wide, bread forgotten in their hands. Even your eldest listens quietly tonight. Your wife braids her hair by the hearth, humming an old tune that doesn't belong to any hymn. She catches your eye once, and she remembers too. The last time this festival came, the youngest was still swaddled. The year before that, your father had danced beneath the maypole before his knees gave way for good. This year, the whole village seems determined to make it the biggest in seasons. The day before the gathering, preparation begins in earnest. The children are sent to collect early blossoms, violets, primrose, wild garlic buds, to weave into garlands. Your wife and a few others prepare the hearth cake. Oats, honey, crushed dried fruits, pressed into round loaves and marked with symbols. One loaf will carry a burnt mark. Whoever finds it must lead the dance. You chop wood for the bonfire. Everyone brings a bundle. Some old fence slats, broken stools, branches from storm-felled trees. A pile grows in the center of the square, surrounded by laughter and teasing and the clatter of carts. It's not a solemn thing. It's noisy, bright, human. The fire is not meant to frighten away spirits tonight. It is meant to invite them in. As the sun dips low on the evening of the festival, you dress simply. Not in fine cloth, you own none, but with a tunic newly washed, a belt borrowed from your brother, and a sprig of green tucked behind your ear. Your wife wraps her shawl tighter and places a small flower wreath on the youngest child's head. They toddle forward, proud as a prince. Together, you walk toward the heart of the village. Already, music fills the air. It starts with flutes, two young lads who learned from a traveling player last autumn. Their notes are thin, reedy, but eager. A girl with a frame drum joins, her rhythm steady and bold. Others bring clappers, rattles, and pipes. A long horn sounds from across the field, answered by laughter. The sky turns indigo. Torches are lit. The great fire in the square remains dark for now, a pyramid of promise. You arrive with your family as others do, in waves. There are no announcements, no commands, only a natural gathering as certain as geese to a thawing pond. The baker hands out slices of warm oat bread. The butcher roasts sausages on sticks over a side flame. A jug of apple mead passes hands, each sip warming cold fingers. You see faces you haven't seen in months. A woman who lost her husband before winter smiles for the first time in a while. A boy you thought had moved away is back, taller now. Even the steward from the manor appears, awkward but welcome, carrying a basket of carrots and hard cheese. For this night, no one is above or below. All are part of the circle. The fire is lit just after the first stars appear. An elder, Agnes, half-blind and sharp-tongued, steps forward with the ember taken from the oldest hearth in the village. She says no words. She needs none. She touches it to the edge of the pile and the flame catches. A cheer rises, not loud but full. The fire climbs upward in golden cracks, curling smoke into the sky. Sparks drift like fireflies. The children squeal. The animals shuffle back. The drums pick up. And so it begins. There is no formal order. One couple begins to dance, barefoot in the soft dirt. Then another. Then four. A ring forms. Your children are pulled into it by friends, shy at first, then spinning. You and your wife sit for a while on the old bench beside the baker's stall, warm bread in your hands, watching the firelight play across familiar faces. Then you rise and take her hand. You don't dance like you once did, but that doesn't matter. The steps are not important. It's the movement, the joy, the act of saying yes to the body, the earth, the moment. Around the fire, a pattern emerges. Hands joined, feet in time, laughter woven through the rhythm. The songs are old, passed down in breath and memory, never written. You remember the chorus before it begins. At one point, your child finds the loaf with the burnt mark. The crowd cheers. They are lifted onto shoulders and lead the circle 3 times around the fire, their arms waving, their voice squeaking out a triumphant laugh. You'll tell them this story again in years to come, but tonight it belongs to now. The evening deepens. Beneath the stars, the air cools but never bites. The fire holds the chill at bay, and the mead flows more freely now. Someone pulls out a fiddle, cracked and out of tune, and plays it anyway. The notes lurch and wobble, but everyone claps along. Someone else sings a song half in jest, half in truth, about a sheep that ran off and joined a monastery. Stories pass between hands like bread. A girl recites a poem she's written on scraps of cloth. A boy juggles apples with more ambition than skill. You find yourself sitting again beside your wife, your backs to a stump, the firelight flickering in her eyes. She leans her head on your shoulder. You stay like that for a long time, not speaking, just listening, to music, to footsteps, to the sound of fire, to the soft hush of contentment that has no need for language. Later, someone brings out the embers cake, a sweet, thick round pressed with dried fruits and nuts, glazed with honey and kissed with ash. It's cut into narrow slices and passed around, still warm. You take yours and break it in, half for the little one curled in your lap. You think of how many of these nights you've seen, some with heavy hearts, some with missing faces, some under lean moons, but this one feels whole, not perfect, but complete. The fire burns lower now, not with urgency, but with ease, like a story that knows when it's nearing the end. Flames no longer leap high into the sky. They settle, flickering gently around thick logs turned to embers, casting long, slow shadows across the ground. The music softens, too. The fiddle, now missing a string, has fallen silent. The drum is played with fingers instead of palms. One of the old men hums a tune so slow and low it almost blends into the crackle of the fire. People draw closer together, not out of cold, but closeness. Proximity means warmth, and warmth means something different at this hour. Means trust, familiarity, the slow press of shoulders, the soft sighs of laughter and tired joy. You sit cross-legged with your youngest on your lap, wrapped in a shawl that smells of home. Their head has grown, heavy against your chest. They do not sleep, but their blinking grows slower with each pass of the stars overhead. Your wife rests beside you, her head tilted to the sky. Her wreath has slid to her neck, a crown-turned necklace. She doesn't fix it. She simply lets it be. The world has grown quiet, but not empty, never empty. The elder Agnes, who lit the fire at the festival's start, begins to speak. Not loudly, not to the crowd, but to no one and everyone at once. A story, no introduction, no grand opening, just her voice sliding between the trees. She speaks of a time before the church stood, before roads were shaped, when people listened more than they asked, when trees were wiser than kings, and the stars were closer than candles. She tells of a man who followed the moon for 100 nights, only to find it waiting for him in his own reflection. The firelight dances across her face as she speaks. No one interrupts, not because of rules, but because it feels like breathing, something sacred, something steady. The story has no clear ending. Fades like mist. Agnes smiles, takes a sip of warm mead from a wooden cup, and leans back into the blanket draped around her shoulders. A few others share their own tales. A boy tells one about a fox who tricks a knight into trading his sword for a chicken. It draws laughter from the crowd, especially when the chicken ends up dueling a wildcat with a spoon. A girl offers a poem about fire and wind, about how both destroy and warm. Her voice trembles but does not break. Your eldest steps forward once, hesitant, holding a folded piece of cloth. Upon it are stitched lines, verse written, with needle and thread. They do not read it aloud, but hold it to the light, letting the words catch fire glow like silver. The crowd nods. That is enough. There is singing, too. Low, wordless singing, rounds of vowel and breath, rising and falling in a spiral. The kind of singing that doesn't need to be learned. It simply returns, like a tune remembered only when you're not trying to. You join in, not because your voice is strong, but because it belongs. The children join, then the elders, then the shy. A few even hum in harmony, filling the darkness with a slow, golden hum that wraps around the bones like warm cloth. A moment passes, then another, and then, as if carried on the last long note, the silence returns. The fire is mostly embers now. Only the occasional flame flickers up between logs, like breath catching in a dream. Ash falls gently like snow. Someone yawns. A mother lifts her sleeping daughter in her arms and drapes a shawl over her shoulders. One by one, the villagers begin to rise. No signal, No bell, just the natural winding down of a night well lived. You gather your things, shawl, breadcrumbs, a wooden cup now empty. Your youngest still dozes on your shoulder, arms wrapped around your neck. Your eldest carries what's left of the sweets. Your wife loops her arm through yours. As you walk slowly toward the edge of the square, you pass others. A boy collecting spent candles. A couple embracing near the cider barrel. A fiddler resting his instrument against a stump as if it, too, needs sleep. All around you, the quiet language of farewell. Not dramatic, not sorrowful, just soft. The way embers say goodbye to flame. The walk home is slow. The path is faintly lit by the stars and the dying glow of firelight behind you. Above, the sky is endless. Clouds have drifted aside. You can see the constellations your father once taught you. The plow, the sisters, the snake that eats his tail. The air is cool now, but not biting. It smells of earth, smoke, and flowers crushed beneath dancing feet. Your wife hums a soft tune. A lullaby, but slower, sadder. Or maybe just wiser. Your eldest walks slightly ahead, still and thoughtful, trailing a stick in the dirt as they go. You feel the weight of your child in your arms. Heavy, yes, but comforting, like warmth stored for later. When you reach the cottage, the fire inside has burned low but not out. You set the little one in their bed, pull the blanket to their chin, and pause for a moment. Their face is still flushed. From dancing, you tuck the sprig of flowers back into their hair, even if it will fall again. Your wife places the last piece of hearth cake on the shelf, wrapped in cloth to be saved for morning. You sit together once more, just for a moment before bed. No more words tonight. You've used them well. You listen to the last of the crickets outside, the pop of the hearth, the deep breath of peace, and with that, you rest. The morning after the festival begins not with firelight or music, but with bells. Their sound carries across the fields like a ribbon on the wind. Long, slow, deliberate tones that call you not to feast, but to stillness. Sunday, the Lord's Day. After celebration comes contemplation. Even the children rise more quietly, as if the bells have cast a hush over the house. The youngest still wears the flower crown, now wilted and askew, and your wife gently removes it, smoothing their hair with the palm of her hand. There is bread left over from the festival, sweet and soft, but no one eats it yet. Not before the walk, not before the church. The path to the chapel is worn from centuries of feet. Bare, booted, small, old, each imprint layered over the last, pressed into earth like memory itself. As you walk, your thoughts shift from warmth and dancing to something older, more solemn. The church stands low and heavy near the edge of the village. Not grand, just stone and wood shaped by humble hands. Its roof leans slightly, as if bowing forever toward the altar. Inside, candles flicker. Smoke from the incense hangs in ribbons of gray light, softening everything. The faces, the rafters, even the crucifix, all seem hazed by something unseen. You dip your fingers in the basin and cross yourself with hands still, stained faintly with soot from last night's fire. The balance between earth and heaven never feels sharper than now. The priest begins the Mass in Latin. You do not understand every word, but you don't need to. The rhythm of it is what matters, the rise and fall of syllables like breath, like tide. Your body knows when to kneel, when to rise, when to bow. It has always known. Faith in this time is not only belief. It is practice, muscle memory, habit worn into the bones. Beside you, your wife closes her eyes. You do the same. And in that darkness, for just a moment, you see not fire or festival, but something slower, images of saints and seasons of sin and mercy, of small prayers whispered under breath in the middle of the night. Your hands fold, your breath evens, and the silence in your heart opens just wide enough for a whisper. The sermon is short today. The priest speaks of humility, of how joy must always give way to gratitude, how pride, even in the harvest, even in dancing, can blind, how the poor are closest to the Savior, for they walk with nothing between their souls and the world. You hear these words as you sit on the old bench, your legs sore from dancing, your body still warm from the firelight, and still you feel no shame. You feel thankful, because your joy was not loud. It was not greedy. It was shared. A candle flickers near the altar, and you remember last night's stories. The flicker of flames, the quiet unity of a circle, the breath between laughter and sleep. And somehow those things feel holy, too. After the service, people do not leave quickly. They linger. Some light candles for the dead, soft prayers whispered into the glow. Some exchange small bundles of bread or help a neighbor gather their shawl. The church steps become a gathering place once again, not for dancing but for gentle care. You take your wife's hand. Your children run ahead, chasing each other through the long grass. And for a moment, the line between the sacred and the simple feels almost invisible. At home, you finally eat. A small breakfast. Quiet. Afterward, you rest. Not because your body demands it, but because your spirit does. You sit by the window and watch the breeze lift dust from the windowsill. You listen to the creak of rafters, the chirp of distant birds. And you think about how belief is not only in the church. It is in the waiting, the hoping, the returning. It's in lighting the fire and trusting that spring will come. In burying a seed and expecting it to rise. In holding a child through fever and singing anyway. These are acts of faith too, and they happen every day. Chapter 9. When storms test the soul, faith, flood, and fragile fields. It began with wind. Not the kind that whispers through the reeds or lifts the hems of skirts in springtime mischief. This wind was sharp, sudden, born of some deep place beyond the hills. It moved not with song but with warning. You felt it first in your chest like a held breath, then in the trees, which stiffened and turned their leaves underside. The birds grew silent save for the crows, always the crows, circling above as if writing some grim scripture. Across the sky, the day had begun peacefully enough. You had gone to the field, same as always, tools slung over one shoulder, your oldest beside you. The soil had grown thick with late spring moisture, promising but temperamental. There had been signs of mushrooms in the dark. Corners of the plot, a sure sign of richness, of a strong planting season ahead. You had just begun tilling the western edge when the light changed. Not dimmed, not darkened, just changed. A strange, sour color washed over everything. Pale yellow, sickly, as if the sun had pulled a veil over its own face. Then came the wind. Your son looked at you, eyes wide. Is it coming? You nodded, slowly. We should go. And though the sky had not yet broken, and the trees still stood upright, you knew the air. You'd smelled it before. Long ago, when you were barely older than him, and the river had burst its banks and swept away 2 goats and your uncle's grain shed. This was that same air, ripe with the smell of wet wood, loam, and fear. You did not run. You moved steadily, fast but not panicked. There was no time for panic, just time to act. Back at the cottage, your wife had already brought in the washing. She looked up from the hearth with eyes that had also known such skies before. No words passed between you. She simply nodded and handed you the leather tarp, the one you used to cover the seed sacks in winter. You and your son tied it quickly over the thatch at the weakest corner of the roof. He climbed with a rope. You anchored from below. Every knot tied was an act of prayer. Every corner weighted was a whispered hope. The wind howled louder now. And then the rain came. Not drops. Sheets. Walls of water slapping the ground so hard they bounced back up again. The dry dust of your lane became mud in minutes. The thatch above groaned. The shutters rattled. Somewhere in the distance something wooden, perhaps, a fence, splintered. Inside the cottage you did what people have always done in the face of storms. You waited, you watched, and you prayed. Not in long Latin phrases, not with the priest's careful diction, but with the small words that belong to storms and soil. Let it pass. Spare the field. Not this year. Please. You sat with your children huddled close, your wife holding the youngest in her lap, her lips at their ear murmuring old songs. You had no bread to break, no meat to eat, Just stew, warm and thin, shared slowly between you. But the fire burned steady. And that was enough. Hours passed. Or maybe it was only one. Time folds during storms. It stretches when you wait for the next crash of thunder. Pauses when the roof creaks. It disappears entirely when you wonder if the seeds in the western plot have floated up from their shallow graves and are now adrift on the brown river that used to be your furrow. You do not know how long it raged. You only know the moment it changed. Because of the silence. When the storm passed, it left behind a kind of stunned quiet. No birds, no wind, just the occasional drip of water from the roof and the creak of a branch somewhere nearby. You stepped outside. The world had become unfamiliar. The footpath had vanished beneath a slick coat of silt and shredded grass. The garden was flattened, cabbage. Leaves torn, beanstalks snapped, a henhouse door hanging from one hinge. But the cottage still stood. And so did you. You walked toward the field with slow, careful steps. Mud sucked at your boots. Somewhere under the gray sky, the crows still circled. The stream had risen. The western edge of the plot had taken on water. A small pool shimmered. Where wheat should have grown. You knelt, put your hands in the soil, and felt not loss, but the heaviness of it all. The weight of what it meant to be alive and uncertain. To plant in faith. To water in hope. And to wait with open hands. That Sunday you went to church. You were sore, mud-streaked, worn, but you went. You went not because you had answers, or because your spirit was lifted. You went because the storm had reminded you. There are things you cannot fix with rope, tarp, or effort alone. There are things greater than your labor. And faith in its oldest form is not certainty. It is returning, again and again, even when the field is flooded, even when the sky is cruel. The chapel was crowded that morning. Others had come, too, some with broken carts, others with soaked bundles of straw. One woman sobbed softly into her sleeve, her husband's arm around her. A boy's boots were missing, replaced with wrappings of twine and cloth. The priest stood at the altar, his robes damp, his voice quiet. His sermon was not about sin, not about punishment, but about roots, about how plants with shallow roots will be torn by wind, but those that grow downward survive the storm. About how faith must be like that, not high, not showy, but deep, not loud, but anchored. You sat with your hands on your knees, listening. Your son sat beside you, eyes fixed on the flickering altar candles. And you thought not of God in the heavens, but of earth, of seeds, of the hands that placed them, of the patience it takes to wait for them to bloom again, even after they've been washed away. You walked home slowly. The storm had passed. The skies were pale and tired now, heavy with the weight of everything they had spilled. Your boots sank slightly into the mud with every step, and the birds had not yet returned. It was a quiet unlike any other, a stillness that followed chaos. Your wife held your youngest's hand. They hummed to themselves, hopping over puddles when they could. Your eldest walked behind, dragging a stick through the softened earth like they were tracing something invisible. Some line they needed to follow home. The village was changed. Fences had fallen. Barrels had floated to new corners. A thatch roof sagged 2 doors down. Where a neighbor had tied theirs too late. But no one panicked now. They just moved calm, tired, but steady. It was the quiet rhythm of people who had seen many storms and expected more to come. When you returned to the cottage, the damage was light. Some water in the corners. A window shutter torn loose. A few roof reeds missing on the northern edge. You sighed not in despair, but in calculation. These were things that could be fixed. You began right away. You patched the shutter, swept out the water, and placed stones around the door to keep the next flood at bay. No one told you to. No one needed to. This is what it meant to live here, to mend without mourning. That evening you ate what remained of the lentil stew. The children were quieter than usual, full of questions they didn't yet know how to ask. You saw it in their eyes. They looked to you, and to your wife, as if waiting for some final answer about what the storm had meant. And the truth was, you weren't sure. So you gave them what you could. You handed them stories. You spoke of the storm 5 winters ago, of the time the goats climbed onto the roof and wouldn't come down for a whole day, of the baker who slipped in the mud and declared it proof that he should be a monk. The children laughed, even if the humor was quiet. Then your wife added her own story, of when she was a girl and lightning struck the apple tree behind their house, splitting it in half but making the fruit sweeter the next year. You could see their little shoulders settle, their thoughts anchoring again. It wasn't about erasing fear. It was about planting courage next to it. That night, the fire burned low but warm. The wind had softened to nothing. You sat on the bench by the window, watching the stars come out between the clouds. Not all at once. Just a few, blinking like eyes slowly opening after a long sleep. Your wife joined you, her hands stained with work, her braid undone. She leaned her head on your shoulder. Neither of you said anything. You didn't need to. The storm had passed, and you were still here. In the morning, the land looked different again. Not clean, but recovering. The field glistened with moisture. Not floodwater anymore, just dampness. The kind that makes boots heavy but also wakes seeds. You tested the soil. Sticky, yes, but not ruined. Some furrows held. Some had been washed clean. You'd have to replant. But that's what you were always doing. Planting again. The neighbors had started their own recoveries. A roof was being thatched anew. Someone dug a trench to redirect the stream. Another reinforced their walls with packed mud and stones. Children collected stray chickens. A woman carried firewood balanced in a linen wrap across her back. You helped where you could. And when you needed help, others came without asking. No one recorded it. No one thanked anyone out loud. That wasn't how it worked. The thanks lived in shared silence and lifted beams. A few days later, the priest passed through the village again. Not in his robes. Just in a wool tunic, sleeves rolled, sandals caked with mud. He brought no sermon, just a small loaf of honey bread. He sat beside you as you repaired a cartwheel. Together you worked in silence for some time. When the task was done, he nodded toward the field. "You'll get something from it," he said. You nodded. "I always do." He smiled. "Even when you don't." You smiled back, understanding what he meant. Even failure was part of the yield. Even hope planted in loss had its own harvest. That Sunday the chapel felt warmer, not in temperature but in spirit. Someone had fixed the dripping roof. Someone else had carved a new cross for the altar, simple and rough. There were more candles than usual, and more voices in the singing. The priest did not preach. He simply invited everyone to sit, to breathe, to be still. No grand words, just presence. You felt it, the shared pulse of many hearts, the echo of many storms weathered in silence. And in that stillness you felt something ancient and holy, not the answer, but the permission to continue. After the service, you and your family walked home slowly. The road was drier now. Dust curled under your feet. And though your shoulders ached and the field still needed reworking, you felt light in a way that couldn't be measured. The storm had come. It had left its mark, but not its ending. You were not broken, just changed. That evening, your wife lit a candle by the window. Not for any ritual, but just because the light felt good. You watched her place it gently on the sill, shielding it from the wind. And as the flame flickered, casting soft shadows over her face and the children's laughter beyond the room, you thought to yourself, this too is an act of faith. To strike a match, to light a flame, to believe it will stay. Chapter 10. The Tax Collector's Visit. The knock came just after midday. Not the knock of a neighbor, not the tap of a child. It was measured, deliberate, like someone making sure they were heard, not welcomed. You set down your bowl of lentil broth. Your wife looked at you, and you knew she felt the same thing rise in her chest. The time had come. Outside stood a man in a dark green cloak, boots polished with wax, and a scroll tube strapped across his back. He held a ledger in one hand and a thin, pointed stick in the other, used, presumably, for both pointing and poking. He did not smile. He did not offer his name. He did not need to. The tax collector had arrived. Your son stood behind you, barefoot in the doorway, face blank. Your wife pulled him back gently. The man cleared his throat. "You are behind," he said plainly. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His words carried the authority of ink, seal, and crown. You nodded slowly. "Aye. The storm set us back. The field." He raised a hand to stop you. "I've heard about the storm," he said. "The church has already made note of it. Still, coin is due, in part, if not in full." You looked down. You had prepared for this. Not in coin, which you had too little of, but in strategy. You turned, stepped inside, and brought out what you had wrapped in cloth. A bundle of smoked eels, 2 carved spoons from your eldest, a jar of wild honey, and a half skein of wool your wife had dyed with nettle root. He raised an eyebrow, then, without comment, knelt to inspect the goods. He touched the spoon with his pointed stick, lifted the lid of the honey, tapped the jar twice. "These will be weighed and valued," he said. "You'll be issued a mark. If there's a shortfall, the baron may require labor in lieu of coin." You nodded again. It was always this way. A ritual, a script, a dance no one enjoyed, but everyone learned. The collector made his notations on a wax tablet, his stick tapping in tiny circles, the script tight and angular. Then, as he tucked away your offerings, he looked up once more. "You have 3 children, yes?" You blinked. "Aye. And no additional field share?" "Not since my father passed." He paused. "I'll note it." That was all he said. Then he turned, not waiting for thanks. Just walked, boots clean despite the path, ledger tucked under one arm like a holy book. When he was gone, you stood in the doorway for a while. The wind had picked up again, gentler this time, like a dog returning after a growl. Your eldest approached you. "Will he come again?" You nodded. Yes. They didn't ask when. They didn't need to. That evening you sat by the hearth. The children played with bits of carved wood, animals and people worn smooth by time. Your wife mended a sleeve. By firelight. You had no feast, no celebration, no special song. But you had quiet, and warmth, and a kind of peace that followed simply from enduring. You thought about what it meant to live beneath power. How the tax collector never had mud on his boots. How his words were shorter than yours, but carried more weight. How the cost of survival was always more than just labor. It was the toll of watching, yielding, calculating. And yet, even in that imbalance, you had not broken. You had bent, but never bowed. You were still here. Outside, the moon rose slowly. It cast a silver wash across the roof, the path, and the field beyond. The field was quiet, soft, waiting. It would need tilling again tomorrow. Seeds would need turning, hands would need blistering. But tonight, there was stillness. Your wife reached across the bench, taking your hand. You both sat in silence. The fire burned low, not for lack of wood, but because the night was long and there was no rush. Your youngest had fallen asleep with a carved sheep tucked under their chin. Your eldest, now almost grown, had stopped playing and simply watched the fire, eyes tracing the dance of orange and shadow. In that moment, you felt something simple and strange. Not joy, not sorrow, but completion. A cycle turning once more. A wheel that didn't need pushing, just presence. The tax collector would return. The storms would come. The church bells would toll. The field would grow or fail. But you would plant again. You would rebuild the fence. You would kneel to tie the tarp tighter. You would walk to church with mud on your boots and a prayer on your tongue. Not for mercy, but for strength to keep going. And tonight you would sleep, not with fear, but with rest, because you had earned it, because you had endured, because in a world that often forgets the quiet, the poor, and the tired, you had made a space for peace. The fire cracks once more. The wind sighs outside the shutters. You close your eyes, and slowly drift